Well, Shabbat Shalom. It is Tuesday night, the evening of October the 11th, and the next High Sabbath has begun. It is the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and as you can see behind me, I have my makeshift tabernacle sort of in my living room here. I don't know if you can see it better. It's my little tabernacle, and it's right over my couch and my computer, so that I can always be under my tabernacle during the feast. And of course, this is a time where we set up our tabernacle. The scripture says for us to erect our tent or our tabernacle or our booth on the first day of this feast. And it's an 8-day feast. The first day is a high Sabbath. And the 8th day, which is the last day, which will fall on October the 19th, will also be a high Sabbath. And this is a very special feast, and it's all about Yahweh tabernacling with man. And so there's actually a scripture in Deuteronomy 14, verse 26, that actually commands us to purchase whatever our soul lusteth after, whether it be sheep or cattle, or it even says strong drink, which would be like hard liquor. Whatever our heart or our soul lusteth after, that's what we're supposed to get, because this is supposed to be a major party time as it's celebrating Yahweh's tabernacling with man. This is also the time when Yahshua was probably born in the fall. So this is a huge feast. It's the biggest feast of the year. And of course we dwell in these sukkahs, in these tents. Mine's kind of modest, but some of these sukkahs can get very, very, very elaborate. We dwell in these sukkahs for 8 days. Here's just a little example of a little food item that I have here for sukkah. Because it's the harvest of fruit. In Israel, it's the grape harvest. So during Passover, that's the feast of the harvest of barley. During Shavuot, it's the harvest of the wheat. But in Israel, for the feast of Sukkot, for tabernacles, it's fruit. So I got a little fruit dessert here encased in chocolate. Just something fun to have for the feast. So if you go to the website, www.spiritandtorah.com, you will see a section now below Reflections of Passover and Reflections of Shavuot, and it's called Reflections of Tabernacles. And you click on there, and you will find a video that I made, a little short YouTube just about Sukkot. And then you'll also see an article that I wrote where I talk about the history of Sukkot, its origins, how it was celebrated throughout history. But on this podcast, I want to talk about its prophetic significance. So, how is Tabernacles related to our future? What does it point toward? We've talked about how Yom Teruah is pointing toward the day of resurrection. We've talked about how Yom Kippur points toward the end of the millennium at the great white throne judgment when all the books are opened and all the dead are judged. But the Feast of Tabernacles foreshadows an incredible event. The reason it is 8 days long is because the Feast of Tabernacles is not completely fulfilled until the 8th millennium. In other words, when Yahshua returns to earth, he institutes the Sabbath millennium. So for 1,000 years, he's ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. But at the end of that millennium, Satan is loosed for a little season. He gathers and deceives many, many, many people. They come down upon the camp of the saints, and then fire from heaven comes down and destroys Satan and those who follow him. And then it says that the heavens and earth flee away from him that sits on the throne. And then, of course, we have the great white throne judgment, in which Satan is cast in the lake of fire. All wicked people are cast in the lake of fire. The last of the righteous are redeemed, and a new heavens and a new earth emerge from the fires. It's a renewed heaven and a renewed earth. It's a new beginning. It's the 8th millennium, the 8,000 years. And 8, of course, is always a symbol for new beginning. Also, the traditional Jewish wedding feast is 7 days long. So this feast is 7 days, and then, of course, there's an 8th day as a day of rest at the end of it. But this is the ultimate wedding. This is when Yahweh himself, in his fullness, descends down with the New Jerusalem onto a renewed planet Earth, and there's no more sin. There's no more death. Even during the millennium, you still have death and things like that. But now there's no death. There's no sin. There's no rebellion. There's no wickedness whatsoever. Everything has been made new. And if you read in Revelation chapter 22, it actually says that when the New Jerusalem is descending down and it starts describing the new heavens and new earth, it says that now Yahweh will tabernacle with men. He will dwell with men, and that's what this whole feast is about. It's about when He dwells with us forever. And then it talks about how the glory of how the kings will bring the glory and their splendor into the gates of the New Jerusalem, and there will be nothing that enters into that city, that holy city of golden light, that lies or defiles or is an abomination. Everything that's wicked is cast into the lake of fire. So the Feast of Tabernacles really is the final feast of the year. I should say the final biblically instituted feast. Of course, we do read later about Purim and Hanukkah, but in terms of when the Torah was laid down to Moshe, Tabernacles is it. It's the last one, because it's looking toward the very end, even past the millennium, when we are all tabernacling with Yahweh. So during this feast, I like to sing some traditional Christmas songs, which I think actually are Sukkot songs. I like to sing Joy to the World, which is all about the millennial kingdom. I like to sing Away in a Manger and O Holy Night, which are all about Yahshua's birth, because this is the time when Yahshua was born. But also, I like to think about how this feast will be fulfilled. I like to think about the New Jerusalem. I like to think about those gates made of pearls. The 12 gates for the 12 tribes of Israel. That's the only way to get into the New Jerusalem, is through one of those 12 gates. I like to think about how Yahweh in all of His fullness will one day tabernacle with man. And it says that during this time there will be no need for a temple, because the Lamb and Yahweh will be the temple therein. Also, we'll have no need of the sun, because Yahweh and the Lamb will be the light that we need. And we will walk in the light, and His name, Yahweh, will be written in our foreheads. It's going to be an amazing time. In fact, it's a time in which we really can't even imagine what it's going to be like, because everything's going to be remade. Everything's going to be renewed. The heavens are going to be completely remade. The earth is going to be completely remade and renewed. It's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. And all the nations will be saved. And it's just going to be an incredibly wonderful time. So because of just the amazing prophetic events that this feast points toward, and I encourage you to meditate on Revelation chapter 21 and Revelation chapter 22 to get a really good sense of what this feast is all about. Because of the amazing prophetic events that this feast points toward, we are supposed to party. I mean, this is supposed to be a feast in which, like no other, in which you're supposed to buy whatever your heart lusteth after. Read it. It's in Deuteronomy 14:26. You're supposed to get strong drink. You're supposed to get food, desserts, everything that you like. I mean, this is really when you're supposed to live it up, because truly this is supposed to be just an incredibly wonderful celebration. So I encourage you to do that during these next 8 days. Of course, it begins tonight, October 11th, until tomorrow night, October 12th, which is Wednesday. It's a high Sabbath. It's the first day of Tabernacles. And then it'll go for 8 days. So it'll go from the final high Sabbath. The 8th day will be from the evening of October 18th until the evening of October 19th. And I realize that many in Israel are keeping it a day later. They're keeping it from October 13th to the 20th, and that's because they're following a Talmudic reckoning of time. And then, of course, those who are looking at the first sliver of the new moon, they're even going a day after that, because they're observing a Babylonian practice, which is to observe the crescent, which is a symbol that's in Islam today. It's the symbol of the moon god. But the correct scriptural way is to go by the completely new moon, the black moon, the conjunctive moon, when the moon's in conjunction. And I have some articles on my website that you can read about that. But over these next 8 days, just remember just the amazing and wonderful time that this Feast of Tabernacles points toward. And that one day, according to Zechariah 14, during the millennial kingdom, all nations, even though there will be those that are not saved at that time, all nations will be required to go up year after year to keep the Feast of Sukkot in Jerusalem. And those nations who do not will suffer a crippling drought and will have a devastating plague upon them. So at some point in the near future, all the peoples of the earth are going to be required to keep this feast. So get in on the action now, keep the feast, enjoy this very wonderful 8-day Feast of Tabernacles. Shabbat Shalom.